Okay, so this will be part 2 of lesson 2. Apologies for the abrupt ending to part 1, but we're doing this on the fly and learning about our technology as we go. So, we were talking about the foil. Basically, recap of foil is that it's French, comes from a duel to the death. So the target for foil is the torso, down here and back, a little bit of the neck. It has right-of-way, meaning that you have to protect yourself as you are fencing your opponent. And because of this right-of-way, only one person can score at a time. And I think where we left off is I would say, this right-of-way is a great equalizer. Because if you know how to use the rules and the techniques that develop out of those rules, then if you have that situation where you're significantly shorter than your opponent, there are techniques that let the short person defeat the taller person. Of course, there are also techniques where the taller person can use those techniques against a shorter person. Techniques to help you if you're not as strong, not as fast. And that helps equal this one out, which is one of the reasons that it gets used as the beginning weapon a lot of the time. This is an épée. Épée is a weapon, also a point weapon, just like the foil. You can only hit the point. And what it does is it comes from more of an Italian background. In Italy, if you got into an argument with someone, you didn't have to kill them. They're a little more civilized. They fought the duel of honor, or the duel to first blood. So, where can I make someone bleed on the body? If I hit them at this point and it's sharp, anywhere. So an épée, the entire body is targeted. The other part of that duel was first. So there is no right-of-way in épée. It's all about hitting first. Someone attacks me, and I think I can stop and hit them before they get to me. I can do that. Bit dangerous, but if they've left themselves open, it allows me to counter-attack and not defend myself first. If I was going to build an épée fencer, you would see they would be very tall and very thin. Long arms, they can reach out farther. If they're thin, then very much less of them to hit. So, height is an advantage in épée. My assistant Will, who you'll see later, is built like a, come on out, built like a prototypical épéist. Tall, skinny, you hate that in an opponent when you come up against it in épée. So, the thing about épée, and we'll do a section specifically on épée later, is that in the electronic era, the way that it's set up, you have 1/25th of a second with which to hit your opponent. And if you can hit within 1/25th of a second of each other, then you both get a point. It's the only weapon where both fencers can score at the same time from the action. So, to recap épée, a little more from Italy. Duel to first blood. The entire body is target. And no right-of-way, so both fencers can score at the same time. And decided advantage to a taller and thinner fencer. saber comes more from Eastern Europe or a part of Germany that used to be called Prussia, also Hungary, that area. This one is for duels on horseback. If you're on a horse, what are the areas that you can really hit your opponent, or where do you not want to hit your opponent? And basically, you don't want to go for the legs of your opponent. A number of reasons for this. First, if they're cavalry guys fighting each other, generally those guys have really heavy boots on. So if you're swinging at somebody's legs, it's just about like they've got some armor. While you're swinging down here at their leg, you're leaving the whole upper part of your body very open to hit. And the actual most important reason that saber fencers on horseback do not go for the legs is that if you missed, you hit the horse. Horses are valuable. You don't want to hit a horse. So, what developed was that the target for saber is everything above the waist. Head, arms, and torso above the waist. Modern fencing, electrically, basically the two hands are what we call off target. You don't hit the two hands. But everything else above the waist. Saber is also a right-of-way weapon, and therefore if someone attacks you with a saber, you have to defend yourself. Saber is the only one of the three where you can hit by making a cut. A lot of times, every little boy that comes in to start a fencing class thinks they want to be a saber fencer, because once they start seeing it, sabers do this. And then they realize that for beginning saber fencers, if they're swinging that hard and they hit you, this is a metal whip. And it definitely will hurt. So they switch back to foil and epee a lot of times. Saber fencers tend to be the fastest fencers going, because so much of saber is built on a reaction time right from the very beginning of every touch that they work on, every phrase, every new point that they go for. And we'll talk more about saber later. So, saber, Eastern Europe, only one that you can hit with a blade. You can use the point. Real saber fencers sort of consider that not so cool. So they will generally try to hit with cuts much more often. You can see it has a little bit of a different fill guard to help protect your hand. Target is above the waist. It has right of way, and speed is the important thing, and it derives from a cavalry. So, just a little bit about my background. I've been fencing for over 40 years at this point. The funny thing is that I started fencing in a college PE class, and here we are teaching a college PE class. So everything has gone full circle. Once I got out of that PE class, it just so happened that some people had showed up to the class and said, hey, we're starting a fencing club. Actually a fencing team at the university where I was. And who's interested? I was a senior, had some extra time, my hand shot up, I made the team, and it just so happened that after that, they shut down the team. 5 of the guys on the team, and you need 9 to have a men's team. We're seniors, we graduated. They couldn't find anyone to replace us the next year. So I am a member of the one and only Indiana State University fencing team. Went to grad school at Bowling Green, Ohio. Guess what? They had a fencing team. I was a very short epeist, and they didn't have anyone who had concentrated on epee, so I sort of helped out for a year as I was a grad student there and taught their épée fencers. Knocked around following, my original job plans and everything. Got to Baltimore, started taking lessons with a fencing master. And fencing master describes the level of teaching that the person can do. It doesn't describe the actual level of their swordsmanship. Stayed with that gentleman for 8 or 9 years. Last few years I was the coach of the women's team at Johns Hopkins University. And while I was there, my women won a National Intercollegiate Women's Fencing Association championship, both the individual and the team event. And they did very, very well, at least in épée. They won the épée squad portion. So, did that. Some other things happened, other jobs where fencing wasn't a part of what I could do. And finally, about a dozen years ago, I came down to Cape Fear, decided to get out of what I had been doing, and have been the coach at Cape Fear for about the last dozen years. In that time, we have 41 national medals, one young 70-plus-year-old woman who has gone to 3 world championships and has won a bronze individual and a gold team medal at the world championships. A couple of women's high school foil champions, a couple of men's high school foil champions, a couple of épée champions, which are co-ed. So we can teach you to fence. My own personal fencing, best I ever did was 1/16th in Division II in foil, and a 9th place at a NAC in épée. It was a Div 3 or a Div 2 NAC, and then took an 8th at one of the original vet fencing tournaments way back in the 90s, and got on a vet team that went and fenced the German national team. But that's sort of my fencing background. That's the end of